And we begin right now with a special report happening on NBC. We join that special report right now.
The administration was forbidding him from turning over a whistleblower complaint on Constitution Day. This is a violation of law. Shortly thereafter, press reports began to break of a phone call by the President of the United States calling upon a foreign power to intervene in his election. This is a breach of his constitutional responsibilities. The facts are these. The Intelligence Community Inspector General, who was appointed by President Trump, determined that the complaint is both of urgent concern and credible. And its disclosure, he went on to say, relates to one of the most significant and important of the Director of National Intelligence's responsibility to the American people. On Thursday, the Inspector General testified before the House Intelligence Committee stating that the acting Director of National Intelligence blocked him from disclosing the whistleblower complaint. This is a violation of law. The law is unequivocal. The DNI staff, it says the DNI Director of National Intelligence shall provide Congress the full whistleblower complaint. For more than 25 years, I've served on the Intelligence Committee as a member, as the ranking member, as part of the Gang of Four, even before I was in the leadership. I was there when we created the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. That did not exist before 2004. I was there even earlier in the 90s when we wrote the whistleblower laws and continue to write them to improve them to ensure the security of our intelligence and the safety of our whistleblowers. I know what their purpose was, and we proceeded with balance and caution as we wrote the laws. I can say with authority the Trump administration's actions undermine both our national security and our intelligence and our protections of the whistleblowers, more than both. This Thursday, the acting DNI will appear before the House Intelligence Committee. At that time, he must turn over the whistleblower's full complaint to the committee. He will have to choose whether to break the law or honor his responsibility to the Constitution. On the final day of the Constitutional Convention in 1787, when our Constitution was adopted, Americans gathered on the steps of Independence Hall to await the news of the government our founders had crafted. They asked Benjamin Franklin, "What do we have, a republic or a monarchy?" Franklin replied, "A republic if you can keep it." Our responsibility is to keep it. Our republic endures because of the wisdom of our Constitution, enshrined in three co-equal branches of government serving as checks and balances on each other. The actions taken to date by the President have seriously violated the Constitution, especially when the President says, Article 2 says I can do whatever I want. For the past several months, we have been investigating in our committees and litigating in the courts, so the House can gather all the relevant facts and consider whether to exercise its full Article 1 powers, including a constitutional power of the utmost gravity, approval of articles of impeachment. And this week, the President has admitted to asking the President of Ukraine to take actions which would benefit him politically. The actions of the Trump presidency revealed the dishonorable fact of the President's betrayal of his oath of office, betrayal of our national security, and betrayal of the integrity of our elections. Therefore, today, I'm announcing the House of Representatives moving forward with an official impeachment inquiry. I'm directing our 6 committees to proceed with their investigations under that umbrella of impeachment inquiry. The President must be held accountable. No one is above the law. Getting back to our founders, in the darkest days of the American Revolution, Thomas Paine wrote, "The times have found us. The times found them to fight for and establish our democracy. The times have found us today, not to place ourselves in the same category of greatness as our founders, but to place us in the urgency of protecting and defending our Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic." In the words of Ben Franklin, to keep our republic. I thank our chairman, Chairman Nadler, Chairman Nadler of Judiciary, Chairman Schiff of Intelligence, Chairman Engel of Foreign Affairs, Chairman Cummings of Oversight, and Chairman Cummings I've been in touch with constantly. He's a master of so much, but including inspectors general and whistleblowers. Congresswoman Richie Neal of the Ways and Means Committee, Congresswoman Maxine Waters of the Financial Services Committee. And I commend all of our members, our colleagues, for their thoughtful approach to all of this, for their careful statements. God bless them, and God bless America. Thank you all.
Madam Speaker, never before has the President been convicted by the Senate. What does this accomplish if the Senate doesn't?
Speaker Pelosi taking no questions, a brief statement, but a bombshell that the Democrats are opening an official impeachment inquiry. I want to bring in Hallie Jackson in a moment to get the White House view, but let me quickly go back out to Jeff Bennett, because, Jeff, what does this mean now in terms of the steps that happen from this point on?
Well, what it means, Lester, is that the work of these committees continues apace, except now I think one way to think of it is that you have Democrats all sort of singing from the same hymn book. You have the House leadership, chief among them, Nancy Pelosi now, embracing their work under the umbrella of an impeachment inquiry. And the reason why this matters because the thinking is it could help unlock some of the underlying evidence that Democrats have been trying to get related to the Mueller report, and even as it might pertain to this whistleblower complaint. Now, some of this has to be tested in the courts, but the thinking is that now that they are working within the framework of an impeachment inquiry, they can point to a different level of need, a different level of urgency when they go to the courts. The other part of this that's important is that Nancy Pelosi has talked before, Speaker Pelosi has talked before about building the case, trying to bring the public along, trying to convince the public of what Democrats see as the full picture of his abuses of power and corruption in office. And these impeachment proceedings, it's a different level of investigative work. The way the hearings are conducted just looks different. And the thinking is that will help move the needle in a way that hasn't happened so far in some of the investigative work that these Democrats have done, primarily through the House Judiciary Committee, Lester.
All right, Jeff, thanks. Let me turn now to Hallie. The president has authorized the release of a transcript of the conversation. It may or may not have the quid pro quo that many are looking for. So how does that factor into what just happened now?
Well, the president, and again, Lester, he's calling it a transcript. We don't know what exactly this release is going to consist of tomorrow. It could be notes taken from officials in the room. It may not be exact verbiage of what exactly went down. But the fact that the White House is releasing it and that the president wants it released is an indication that there may not be the smoking gun that some Democrats want to see. Stepping back, this moment, this afternoon, is a defining moment, one of several in the Trump presidency so far. The first half of his tenure was defined by the special counsel investigation. The second half will likely be defined by this impeachment inquiry. So how is the president's world, how are her folks inside that orbit reacting? Based on my reporting, it's a mix of trepidation about this and defiance, that sort of traditional attitude that we sometimes see from President Trump.
Let me get you to pause right there, because I'm told the president has just tweeted. I haven't seen it, but there it is. Such an important day at the United Nations, so much work and so much success, and the Democrats purposely had to ruin and demean it with more breaking news, witch hunt garbage, so bad for our country. A tweet that just came from the president.
Already you're seeing the president brand this, just like he branded the special counsel investigation as a witch hunt, except this time it's not Robert Mueller behind it. In his view, it's Nancy Pelosi and the House Democrats. Although I'm told by sources familiar with the president's thinking that he doesn't want necessarily impeachment, there is a sense this could be politically helpful for him and that it could encourage his base to turn out, the president's core supporters, and fire them up.
That's the Pelosi gamble here.
That's the gamble, and it is a bit of a political risk. When you look at some of the polling numbers on this, granted, prior to this whistleblower complaint emerging, most Americans from recent polling don't support moving forward with these impeachment proceedings. And I think that's why you saw Speaker Pelosi draw such a through line to the Constitution. How many times did she talk about it in that brief statement there, trying to make the argument, and I've heard this from other Democrats, this goes above politics in their view. This is about upholding the oath of office that they took as members of Congress when they entered the halls of the Capitol.
Let's not forget, a lot of Democrats were also on the fence about this. The tipping point, apparently, that phone call and the implications.
She had almost no choice here at this point, because even just in the last 24 hours, Lester, you have seen some roughly 24 Democrats come out now and change their position on impeachment. The pressure had been building slowly, and then it built all at once, given this phone call and the reports of what the president discussed with the leader of Ukraine. By the way, the president wants to talk about his successes and what he's done here, as he put it, at the United Nations General Assembly. You know who he's meeting with one-on-one tomorrow is the president of Ukraine.
And let's talk about, okay, you got the transcript. Nancy Pelosi also saying we want to hear the story of the whistleblower. That's a potentially long legal battle ahead of us as well.
Absolutely, and a legal battle that could extend for months, if not longer. It's going to come to a head, at least at the start of it, later this week, when you have the acting director of national intelligence, member of the Trump administration, who has been blocking this complaint from being turned over, appearing in front of these congressional committees in an open session at one point, both the House and the Senate side. When you talk about the Senate piece of it, Lester, and you heard this question being shouted to Speaker Pelosi as she walked out of the room, and if our viewers couldn't hear it, it related to what the Senate is going to do at this point, because the House could move eventually, potentially vote to impeach President Trump. The Senate is majority Republican, and right now, when I talk to sources in and around Trump world, they point to the fact that so far the GOP is mostly a united front here. You have seen very little daylight between the president and his allies on Capitol Hill, and that could be advantageous for the president.
There was some thought that this would focus solely on this Ukraine conversation and Joe Biden, but she talks about the committees continuing their work. Does that suggest that this will be based on everything that they have laid out?
Because it's not just the Ukraine sort of story that has emerged in these last few days, and it's also not just the special counsel report and what our colleague Jeff Bennett was talking about as it relates to information that members of the House wanted on that. It's the president's finances. It's the president's business. It's conflicts of interest potentially related to the way that the president has conducted himself in office. It is a wide-ranging umbrella that these oversight, intelligence, and judiciary committees are investigating. That all moves forward now with the increased threat and potential for subpoenas down the road if the Trump administration continues to do what they have been, which is saying to House Democrats, hey, we believe that we don't have to give you the information that you're demanding from us.
We are certainly at a moment of history. Another Trump tweet has come out. Let's put it up on the screen because I don't have it in front of me. There it is. Pelosi, Nadler, Schiff, and, of course, Maxine Waters. Can you believe this? So he has...
Yeah, and let me just set the scene. He's sitting, Lester, just a few blocks from where we are at Trump Tower. He has returned now from the United Nations General Assembly before more events later. Clearly, the president is watching what is unfolding in this extraordinary day right now.
Yeah, officially on his calendar, it's executive time before he goes to an event here in New York this evening. Hallie, on that point we were talking about, let me bring in Pete Williams right now, who's been doing his homework about where all this goes. Pete, there has been the assumption that once you put it under the umbrella of an impeachment inquiry, that begins to unlock legal doors in terms of testimony, in terms of grand jury testimony. Is that a given or is that in dispute as well?
No, it's not a given at all. And, you know, I think there's two ways to look at what the Speaker has done here. You can either say that this is impeachment times 6 because 6 committees will be looking at this, or you can say it's impeachment light because no one committee will be concentrating on just looking at impeachment. So in a way, you could look at this as maybe sort of rebranding this. Now, she did say that one issue is whether, she repeatedly said that it was a violation of the law for the intelligence community's inspector general not to pass along this whistleblower's complaint. Well, that's contested because the Trump administration's position has been no, you only pass along stuff through that whistleblower conduit when a whistleblower in the intelligence community is objecting to something about an intelligence community product or activity. And what they're saying is the president's conversations with the Ukrainian officials didn't fit that category, and that's why they didn't pass it along. But regardless of whether that's a violation of the law, regardless of whether you view the president's conduct with Ukrainians as violating national security as she did, it's well to remember that impeachment is a political process. It's not a legal process. It doesn't stand the same tests of the federal criminal law or federal civil law. As Gerald Ford once famously said, an impeachable offense, a high crime or misdemeanor, is whatever the House says it is.
Pete Williams. Pete, thank you very much. Hallie, thank you as well. I'll be back with a complete wrap-up on NBC Nightly News. For now, I'm Lester Holt, NBC News.